Live from the KHOU11 studios, it's Great Day Houston. And now, here's your host, Debra Duncan.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Great Day. Okay, so the school bell has already sounded for some students. Other students will start hitting the books over the next few weeks. But the classroom isn't the only place they learn valuable lessons. Those lessons are being taught in every avenue, from the playground to social media. New York candidate for mayor Anthony Weiner taught us how tweeting or texting can impact future aspirations. Look at that. Okay, now you're upset about that because it does look kind of good, okay? But in his case, it's actually called sexting. As a grown man, he is facing the consequences, but children might not understand how such an act could hurt innocent people, let alone themselves. Joining us with more on that issue and the other lessons kids learn that are not part of the curriculum, please welcome certified relationship and sex therapist Emily DeAyala and relationship expert Dr. Dia Von Young. Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll let you know if you have a relationship issue or question, give us a call now at 713-284-1055, 713-284-1055. Our therapist will take your calls in just a bit. And in the audience, remember that if there's an embarrassing question you need to ask, you start with, I have a friend who. That gets you out of everything. Okay, the whole sexting debate, which has been going on ever since the first time around that he did it, but it's also something that we have seen kids take part in as well, so they might not understand the tools that they have in their hand. Let's start first with adults. Is it really that bad?
No, I don't think so at all. I mean, it's something I recommend to my clients sometimes. I do think it's something that needs to be done carefully. I generally discourage sexting unless you're in a longer-term committed relationship because there are a lot of risks involved as well.
Yeah, and also who you're sexting to is kind of the key. That's what Anthony Weiner got in trouble over.
Yes.
Well, I'm going to say this. Sexting is okay, provided that you understand that you cannot ever delete that once it goes out.
Yeah.
It is somewhere in cyberspace. If you're going to sext someone, make sure that they have as much to lose as you do.
Ooh, yeah. Okay.
Givers should be receivers as well, I say.
Yeah, all right, but we've seen this case where students have done things like this, and this becomes a whole nother arena and really can cross the line into legal issues as well.
It can, for kids, there absolutely should be no sexting. It can constitute child pornography, and that's something that both kids and parents need to be aware of. The parents need to be talking to their children about this because there are legal issues that can come about as a result.
Yeah, all right. And then one of the questions we're going to ask in our Facebook question has to do with really what's considered cheating. We know we went through this with President Clinton when he just said, I did not have relations with that woman, because we had to define what the act really was. Is sexting really cheating, or does it take more than that to constitute cheating?
Let's go here with that question.
Okay.
First, define your relationship, then you will know if it's cheating. If you make an assumption that you are in a relationship and you're the only one that's aware of that, you probably have a problem. So, you probably have a problem. So start by defining, is this a relationship? And you need to ask that point-blank question, what is it that you expect of me? Are we committed? Often what we do is attach something like a title because we've been intimate, because we've spent $5 or $10 at Frenchie's. Well, okay, hopefully he took you somewhere better than that. But the bottom line is...
But of course, in the Weiner case, it was a pregnant wife at home.
That type of thing. Right. So how can you assume someone is cheating on you when you haven't confirmed the status of your relationship?
Yeah, because oftentimes that can happen.
Right. I agree with that. You need to know what kind of relationship you're in and what boundaries you two decide as a couple that you want to set around that. But I think people who engage in this kind of stuff, as in the case with Weiner, there's a lot of distorted thinking that occurs in these kinds of cases. And so that's something to remember. They will come up with excuses or minimize or distort what they're really doing in an effort to make themselves seem less guilty. But, the fact is he was sending something with the sole intention of creating sexual arousal in another person. And
is that
in
where
my
cheating
opinion,
begins?
I think that starts to toe the line.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah,
I
and
do.
I off-color joke when I said, well, it looks kind of good earlier, because I actually heard some women say, well, it's okay because at least he looked good. I mean, it's like...
But cheating doesn't begin there. Actually, cheating, if we're to use that terminology, we get it from being deceptive, from doing something that you would not want to get caught doing. And with someone that is married, or engaged or in a committed, defined committed relationship, the minute that you betray that trust, that's when it's cheating.
Yeah, yeah, or you have
That's
any
true.
kind of emotional connection to somebody, and
Right.
that's where it can be. All right, we're talking about the school bell ringing, so all kinds of things that kids will learn that are not part of the actual curriculum. But you know, this is such a tough time for parents when they send their kids into school. But we have to remember that that is where kids learn some of the most valuable lessons of life. They learn how to integrate themselves into society. They learn how to stand up to a bully. They learn how to not be bullied. All kinds of things that we can learn on that playground. So the hard part is for us as parents not to try and shield our kids too much, but at the same time, not let them get hurt.
Can I say this, Emily, real
Sure,
quick?
go ahead.
Kids have a lot more chronological real estate left than those of us that are of a certain age. You have to think, what is the odds of me being with Billy or with Jane or whomever you're dating 5 years from now? And how serious are they really taking me? Because at the end of the day, what causes this betrayal is a lack of commitment and a lack of respect for someone. In your 20s, for men, all the way up until your 30s, you don't even have respect for yourself. So ladies, I warn you, make sure that before you trust someone else with your reputation, you might want to give that a second thought.
I think you got an amen from the crowd there, Emily.
And you know, to add to that, the one thing to remember with kids and with teenagers, their brains are not fully developed. They don't have the fully developed prefrontal cortex that full-grown adults have, and that's the area of the brain that's involved in decision-making, planning, thinking about consequences. That part just isn't completely developed, and so that's really where parents have to come in and help them make those decisions, because they're acting without really thinking of the consequences.
Yeah.
And in some ways, it's not completely their fault.
Yeah, yeah. The key word you said was help them make decisions, because
Right.
sometimes we make decisions for them.
Yeah.
I remember a psychologist once saying that their child had gotten his driver's license, and they said, "What time do I have to be home?" Because he had a curfew, and they said, "Be home at a reasonable hour." I said, well, what time is that?
Yeah.
Be home at a reasonable hour. And he kept saying, well, what time is that? Because normally parents say, you be home at 10 and da-da-da-da.
Right.
And they said they were going to give him till midnight. They heard the key in the door at 10 o'clock. And the kid came rushing in, did I get in on time? Because what they did was put the onus on that child to make the
Right.
decision. And a lot of times we don't know what decisions our children will make because we're too busy making it for them.
Exactly. I do think, especially as they're growing into older adolescents, it's good to give them a little bit of leeway. They need to make some mistakes from themselves. I mean, so that's the way we learn some of the best lessons, I think. But there needs to be always a level of involvement from the parents, too.
Yeah, there are a lot of kids who are looking forward to going back to school, a lot of kids who kind of slump and go, the bullying's going to start again. And so how to deal with the bullying there, because again, you don't necessarily want to just remove your child. I have friends who literally have removed their children from school, and sometimes it's necessary.
Right.
But also there is a lot of value in working it out with the other party as well.
Well, self-bullying is something we don't address, and that's when we start beating up ourselves, wanting to fit in. We start acting out and doing behaviors because we want to be accepted. So as it relates to this subject of sexting, be careful that your daughter or your son isn't doing something to validate their self-esteem because they figure, well, you know what, I play football, look at my chest, it's nothing wrong with showing this. Or your daughter, okay, I've got some curves in the right spots now, let me be the topic of conversation. You have to ask your kid, is this really whom you want to be? Is this really how you want people to see you? Because to be quite frank, as with adults, you are not going to have an external solution to what's an internal problem. So parents, and as well as aunts, uncles, and friends, you are the first line for self-esteem for your kids.
Because it becomes desperation, really.
Yeah, that's exactly
Yeah.
what it is.
On that line, we got a letter from a woman last week who was really concerned about the whole idea of designer clothes for your children. I remember I was babysitting some bad kids to get enough money to buy my Jordache jeans. Okay? So it's always been there. Always in society, it's been there to be able to have certain things to say, look at me, type of deal. But there is a line of where that's healthy, where that's not unhealthy. So can you kind of give us some guidelines on that?
Sure. I mean, I think, you know, you want to help your child to feel good about themselves, and so you want them to be dressed appropriately. And now, using designer labels, I think it's important to have a dialogue with them about the fact that that's not going to do much for them in the long run. It will give them that brief momentary high of, oh, look what I have, but when they come home at night and they're sitting in their rooms alone and they're still not going to feel good about themselves, having the designer bag isn't going to do much for that.
Yeah.
So I think it's about trying to strike a balance between, helping them feel good about themselves to an extent. You want your kid to be dressed appropriately, but not indulging them so much that they're then relying on that to feel good. You want the esteem to come from yourself, not from other or from external sources.
Right.
And another thing, in addition to what Emily is saying, is that as you start teaching your child about relatedness and relating to other people, the most important thing is you teach your child this one lesson. Don't worry about how other people see what you have on. They're going to forget what you wore, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So teach your children to be compassionate and respectful of other people, and that's going to give them the social brownie points that they're really looking for.
All right. Well, speaking of cheating earlier today on Facebook, we want to know, where do you draw the line when it comes to cheating? What if it was just sexting or an online relationship? Is that the same as really hooking up and doing the deed? Log on and let us know what cheating really means to you. We'll share some of your comments a little bit later on in the show. Our therapists are sticking around to take your calls. If you have a relationship question, just call us now at 713-284-1055, 713-284-1055, and our experts will do their best to guide you in the right direction.
Make
issues. Certified relationship and sex therapist Emily DeAyala and relationship expert Dr. Dia Von Young are taking your call, 713-284-1055. We also ask you to comment on Facebook. Where does cheating begin with you? Ryan Clark says cheating is cheating. It doesn't have to be sexual. Crystal Ray Solis says if you have to hide it, then it's cheating. All right, keep your comments coming, and we'll share some more of those throughout the show. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Good morning, Carmen.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. What's your question for our therapist?
Okay, well, first of all, I've been watching you since you first came out, and that was just, what, 20-something years ago?
Well, I think it was 14 years ago, but if you do think it's 20, it's okay. Time flies when you're having fun.
The question is, look, there's a free app. The free apps that are couch sex games. I was wondering, I have 3 adult males in my house, so it's 24/7. I don't know how to use a Facebook thing or what on any way, any form. How do I regulate this? Because I'm hearing the moanings and the goings on day and night. And I have no say in my house. I have no say in my house. How can I regulate this? So it's a free.
You said you have 3 adult males. Are these your sons?
2 of them. That was my husband.
Oh, okay. So what you're saying is you have 3 children in your house. Okay.
He's at home. They're home. They're not, know. So it's like whoever's home, it's all day, all night, because they're 22. My sons, my twins. So, and then my husband. So it's a consistent. It's a free app on PBS. So for the greater Houston area, local Houston area,
okay.
it's a free app. How can I regulate it? What say do I have if I am so ignorant to the technology of it?
Okay, she's needs to regulate her son and her
Carmen
husband.
needs to leave Starbucks alone. No, being quite honest, Carmen, what you need to do is not focus so much on regulation, but on what is it that you are endorsing, and monitor how your sons are being affected by their behavior. If you see that your sons are starting to do things with bravado in mind, ask them, is this really who you are? And why are you doing this? Do you feel so little comfort about being yourself that you have to build your self-esteem off of your cell phone, who sent you a picture or who you sent a picture to? To be honest, if the mark of a man, or especially a young man, isn't how other people feel about you, but it's about how you feel about yourself.
It almost speaks to the addiction rule, Emily. If it starts interfering with your everyday life.
Right. So, I mean, like in the case of Wiener, when someone continues to engage in a behavior despite the negative consequences, you may want to start thinking about the fact that that could become something that's compulsive. If there is a level of preoccupation, if what you're doing is, you know, happening when you're supposed to be working, spending time with friends, spending time with family.
Or it's digging into your wallet too much.
Yeah, if you're spending inordinate amounts of time and money on the behavior, then it starts to toe the line of pathology. And so I think it's important for people to take a look inside and ask them those questions.
Mama, you need to put your foot down and remind them if Mama ain't happy, nobody in the house is going to be happy. All right, let's go to Elizabeth. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
What's your question for our therapist?
My question for the therapist, and it's probably directed towards Dr. Young, is that I have been dating a guy, really kicking off very, very well. You know, met his best friend, you know, really wooed me very well, basically baited me in, and I like him. Everything's mutual. Then all of a sudden, he decides that he needs some space. And so never cross the line, and he just put that out there, never cross the line, I just need some space. So I don't know, does that mean they don't want to talk to you anymore? Do you give, or how much time and space do you give them?
Well, to answer your question, don't engage in mind reading. It's an activity that never works. People probably do need their space, and there are things that I suggest that you do to determine the nature of the personality that you're dealing with. There is a term, typology, and it's often associated with the Myers-Briggs instrument or what have you. But if someone is an introvert, they probably need some space. It doesn't mean they don't like you. It doesn't mean they don't want to be with you. Often people that are very successful professionally or climbing that corporate ladder have to commit those energies to things that are going to help build their brand or further their giftings. So what I would suggest is two things. First, ask a question and don't assume. Second, don't take it too personal, because it's a complicated world that we live in, and people are often complicated just like that world.
You know, and sometimes I will say, as women, we want to be such helpers, and sometimes we, I think, smother that other person. They don't know how to tell you that.
Right.
But I remember a friend telling me once, what happens to a dog when you chase it? It runs away, doesn't it? What happens when you run from a dog?
Chasing.
Yeah.
All right, we have an email question right here.
That's unfair, Deborah.
Yeah, I'm just saying. When I left, he came running. Okay, question number one. Okay, for email question number one. Is it all right for a mom to read my daughter's text on her phone? Even though she pays for her own phone, I feel like I should have a right as a parent to keep dibs on what she's up to. And that comes from Margaret.
I do think that a parent has that right. You know, if your child's bought her own car, you wouldn't let her go take road trips wherever she wanted. You would still implement some rules and boundaries around that, and I think the same applies for a cell phone. You know, and it's not so much about them, but it's about who's on the other end that you have to worry about. And so you can kind of couch it like that to your teen and talk about who is receiving this. You know, yes, I trust you, but I'm not sure who you're talking to, and we need to have an open dialogue about that.
Yeah. It also tells you a lot about your child. I have a friend right now whose child was sending explicit messages at the age of 14, to a boy. But
Yeah.
that let her mother realize, wow, we have some real self-esteem issues that we need to work on here, because she never would have guessed it. Quiet little smart girl, never would have guessed it, and then saw it in those messages.
Yeah,
So-
I do
Hey,
think
hang
from
on.
time to
Hang
I'm
on,
sorry. I'm
what?
sorry. Two things. First, how old is this kid? Because if your child is 19 years old or older,
difference.
Right. But
you're,
if you have a
you're
minor,
violating that
or
kid's
if you're living
privacy.
in
Yes,
my
okay.
house,
absolutely.
and I
Yeah.
have some concerns about you.
Michael said you would say that.
Yeah.
And then here's the second part of it, though, is that where did we get the behavior from? Often parents don't take responsibility to their contribution to that kid's behavior. So before you start looking at where the apple fell, kind of look at what kind of tree you are and where you're planted.
Well, I think you have to start the conversation so early,
Right,
you know,
right.
because if you're not talking to your kids at all, you're not going to really know who they are. They're changing so much in those years. I mean, almost on a day-to-day basis. So dialogue has to be happening from day one. They're getting the cell phones earlier and earlier now, so you want to talk to them from that first day about what the rules and boundaries are, and ultimately it's for their safety.
Right,
And
right.
yes, with someone older of age, I do agree you're violating a boundary, but I think with the younger ones, there needs to be more
And
involvement.
sometimes you really got to look at what's going on. You have a child at home that has a drug issue.
Right.
And you can look on that when they're telling you, no, Mom, I'm not using. If you can pick up that phone and it's sitting there and you
Right.
see there's something else going on,
Yeah.
maybe you might need to. I would say that's one of those things you got to play by ear, but definitely if you have a minor, kids have to understand that parents have a right to all of those things.
And know your kid. I mean, is your kid one that's likely to maybe engage in a little bit riskier behaviors than someone else? If so, you may need to keep a closer
And I
eye.
think that's the point. Know your kid. A lot of us think we know them.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, surprise.
I know.
You never know. All right. The toughest job you'll ever love. If you would like more information on Dr. Debra Duncan and Emily DeAyala, just go to our site, greatdayhouston.com. Once again, thank you two very much for
Thank
your
you.
advice.
Thank you.
Still ahead, a common ingredient found in your home could help you lose weight just by smelling it. What? We'll tell you what it is and sniff out other weight loss tips next.